Okay, now I'm about to fill this pen. This is a Delta Marte Journal Oversized. You can see it comes with a piston. It's similar to the aftermarket type, and you can unscrew it, which I like for cleaning, and just screw this out of the barrel. It screws in rather than friction fit, which I also like. And it holds a fair amount of ink. Now you can, the way this journal pen is made, the Delta Journal, you can just take the blind cap off and fill it here. This is that same mechanism sticking out through the back. However, you can't see how much ink you've loaded, but all you have to do is simply unscrew the barrel, and now you have clear access to seeing where the piston is and how much ink you've taken up. I'm going to stick it in the jar here and fill. Alright, I'm not going to worry about trying to fill all the ink. You can see that there is a little gap here. What I'm going to do is burp it by turning it upside down, and if you let the ink fall back, you can kind of run that up through the front. Now it will drip out if you're not careful, which I wasn't careful. Too busy paying attention to the camera rather than what I'm doing. I'm going to move the ink, and let's try the nib that came with this here. The cap posts, but not real securely. I never have trouble with it. I've been using this a while for taking notes. Alright, here we have the, I'm just going to put this below where I wrote. Actually, I'll just start a new page. This is the Delta Marte Journal Oversized. Now, this does not really flex. You can get a tiny bit of variation, as with most modern pens that they describe as soft. You could draw with it. I have done that on occasion. However, I have other pens I prefer for drawing. It hatches well. It makes a nice line. You can get a little bit of expression with it, but not much line variation. It is fun to write with. It is an extremely smooth nib. I wouldn't say it's completely noiseless, but it's more like a shh than a scratch. Very smooth, up, down, all around, very smooth. My writing doesn't seem to be so good today. I have good days and bad days. Okay, now that was with Pelikan. I'm not even remembering to spell right. Pelikan Sapphire Blue ink, which is a lovely ink. I use it a lot. Now, what I'm going to do though, I'm about to stop and convert this pen. Okay, I was at the Atlanta Pen Show recently, and I picked up this ink that I haven't used before. It's a platinum carbon ink. Platinum carbon ink. And they say it is permanent in the term of light fast, and that it dries waterproof. So I'm going to give that a shot with this nib. And didn't actually have the pen down in there. Okay, Okay, this is one of my pen kits. What I've done is take a paint set, and I took old film cans, which I happen to have. They're clear and they fit in these slots. And I label them with the type of pen nib. I have here, I have here my Zebra G nibs, which I am dumping out. I'm going to take one of them and take it in and wash it. Alright, here I am at the sink. I have a scrubbing pad to which I've added a little bit of dishwashing liquid. My favorite is Dawn because it is an excellent degreaser. And I'm going to take this scrubbing pad and I'm just going to clean the nib. You don't have to overdo this, just rub it a little. I like these scrubbing pads because they actually scratch the nib just a little bit. Now if you're using a gold nib, don't do this. But for the steel nibs, a tiny bit of scratching helps the ink flow. When I was in college, we used to carry a pen nib in our cheek between our teeth and gums so that the saliva in the mouth would remove the varnish and etch fine pits on the steel. Don't do that. Somebody might swallow one. I don't do it anymore. I just wash them with a scrubbing pad. Alright, now I have loaded the pen with ink. I did burp it while I was off, I had the camera off. I'm putting the barrel back on. It screws back on. And I post it. And I'll start writing with it. This is the, I did what I, with these super sharp drawing points that are made for dip pens, they don't have iridium on the tip. And if you're wiping it off, you can accidentally get a thread or a little piece of paper towel in the split between the threads, which will cause problems. I just wiped that off. I am not at a good posture here where I'm filming, but I'm just going to try and give you a sample of what this thing will do. This is, get it started. This is the Delta. Now, as always, I may have to go back and adjust the feet on this pen to have a little more ink flow, because a flex tip runs a lot more ink than a regular writing tip. So you need to adjust for that. And increase the ink flow. And we can do that sometimes just by sliding the tip a microscopic amount. Now, see how this is doing now. Okay, I adjusted the tip just by pulling it out a tiny fraction. It is now writing like a champ. And if it doesn't write well, I just picked up a hair. Alright, I think I got rid of it. If it doesn't write well, that's probably me, not the pen. I've done several of these conversions. It does take some time sometimes to get the flow just right. It can be too fast for the way you write, or too slow. I am standing at an awkward angle. It's making me bump the curves here. But this tip, I've made, like I said, several of these conversions. It's a great drawing pen. You can sketch quickly with it. You can get wide variations in line. It's very expressive, almost like using a brush. And this is the Zebra. G nib. And always like to make an S. It's one of my favorites. You can see it's a very useful pen. And the reason I use the Zebra G is that it is available in this titanium, which is gold colored. And this looks better with the pen. Looks more like it should. It doesn't look like a gold nib per se, but it's closer, and at a glance it looks better than a regular steel nib. I'm going to show you some of my line variation here. I'll just hold this up so you can see it. This was on a Rhodia graph pad. Now, if you had a Bristol pad and you wanted to sketch, you could make very fine lines. Now you can hear it scratching. It's a scratchy pen, and but no, certainly no worse than a dip pen fitted with this same nib. And you can make expressive lines. On the Bristol, you rarely pick up a piece of paper, so you can be a little more aggressive, but I would still go light. And don't stick your finger in the ink like I just did. All right, that's what happens. See that the tine spread so wide the ink flow could not keep up. If you go really slowly, you can make a bigger line. It also goes through ink very quickly, so you do need to be aware of that. But look at the difference between that fat line here and the smallest line you can make. Incredible. All right, that was the conversion to a Zebra G nib on the Delta. And here we go. It's a lovely pen. I am going to do the measurements. All right. Here's a drawing pad. This is a Strathmore 400 series drawing pad. I'm going to take this pen and sketch on it a little. This is much thinner, cheaper paper than the Bristol. It's still nice paper, but when you start drawing with this, you do have to be a little more aware of maybe picking up a tiny piece of paper. Trying to do it on purpose. There we go. This is an extreme example. Oh, here we go. You can see that on camera. That's an extreme example of a piece of paper caught in the nib. And what I do is I go over to usually a scrap piece of paper and just spread the tines and pull, and it will usually come right out. I usually do both sides just to make sure. But I cause that on purpose by going really slowly and making like a puddle that softened the paper and then went across it. So of course that's what you want to avoid when you're actually drawing. If you make a puddle, let it dry. Draw on some other part of the paper. Mostly I don't make puddles. I just draw quickly with it. You can see a little bit of feathering here. I'm point that out when I hold this up. All right, if you look over here, this line started to feather a little. All right, stop this.